Hey everybody in Facebook land, hope you're having a great Tuesday. I want to let you know that tonight for ABA Speech Live, we're going to be talking about pairing and preference assessments. So if you are working with students who are not feeling so energetic about being at therapy, then this would be a good time to watch this show. And also, if you have students who seem like they're not really into a lot of the traditional reinforcers that you may have available, preference assessments are a really great tool. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. If you're new here, my name is Rosemarie Griffin. I'm a speech language pathologist and a board certified behavior analyst practicing here in Ohio. I work in a public school and I also work in a private school, so the best of both worlds. And this school year, what we're going to be doing is a Facebook Live every week where we talk about different applications of using applied behavior analysis to help students increase their communication skills step by step. So that is what we're talking about tonight. So thanks for joining me. I'm talking to you from Ohio, so let me know where you guys are tuning in from. So like I said, to review really quickly, last week we talked about, welcome everybody, we talked about the different verbal operants. So really quickly as a review, we talked about manding. So if I have a car, I stole some of my son's toys. So if I have a car and I want the car and I see it, I may say car or play car. Okay, that would be a mand. If I'm tacting it, I may say car. It's almost like a label. I'm labeling it, okay? And a COIC would be if I was a speech therapist or a special educator and I said, say car, and the student said car after me, our verbal behavior matches, then that would be in a COIC. And then we also talked about interverbals. So an interverbal is where our communicative message does not match. So I may say, vroom, vroom goes the car. That would be an interverbal. Or I could say, what's your favorite vehicle? And you could say car, okay? So I worked on all the different operants today. I'm trying to think of what I did in therapy. Let me know, did you work on manding today, tacting, comment, or like in the Facebook feed there? So that was a little review of what we talked about last time. So today what I wanted to talk about is pairing and preference assessments. So pairing, really the definition is using high reinforcers to condition people, materials, or environments as reinforcing. And why that's so important is that oftentimes I am working with, and a lot of us in the field are working with students who have maybe historically had a hard time with education or with learning. And so there's this term in the behavioral field that we're going to pair. We really just want the student to love being with us, love all the items that we have, like the materials, the setting. And so we as speech language pathologists, and if you're not in the behavior analytic field, you may just call that building rapport, right? We do this. But what I think happens sometimes as speech therapists is that I know that when I was in school, we always talked about creating a language-enriched environment. So what I think happens sometimes is that we may feel like if the student isn't talking all the time in these pairing sessions, when we're pairing and getting to know the student, is that we may feel like we're not doing therapy. So when I worked down in Leander ISD down in Austin, I did a lot of work with the speech language pathologist, and I would meet with them monthly, and this is one of the things that we talked about. Because I think that we're always thinking like, okay, I need to get the student to talk, I need to work on this IEP goal, but what we really have to do first is work on pairing. We want that student to think that, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about pairing and preference assessments tonight. So we want the student to think, oh, okay, this is the lady that has the cars and the lady that has the dog toys and has all these super fun things. And so pairing would just be us using a rotating array of reinforcement. So getting to know the student, getting to know, oh, the student likes these things, the student doesn't seem to like these things, and not demanding a lot of information, okay? So we may say like, oh, it's a dog. Wow, look at the dog. The dog says woof. And that's it. I'm not gonna ask the student, what is it? I'm not doing any of that when we're pairing, not at first, especially if the student is nonverbal or limited verbally, okay? I just want the student to know, I'm here, I'm supportive, I'm the person, the lady or the man who has all the fun toys, and I'm excited to see you, and I'm not going to demand a whole lot of things at first. Okay, we're going to ease the demands in so that learning is fun, right? That's how school should be when you're younger. So that's what pairing is. So let me know in the comments, or if you have worked on pairing before, hit like or give me a reaction and let me know. So that's what pairing is. And what I do as a speech language pathologist is I will just write on the data sheet that I'm pairing with the student, because that's really important. And then I may write what types of things they enjoyed and what types of things they didn't seem to enjoy that much, because that's important for me to know going forward. And I think what happens is we forget to take that time to pair ourselves with reinforcement and to pair our materials and the environment where we're working with the student with reinforcement. And then if we don't have that, I've been calling it a cooperative therapeutic relationship. I don't know, it's just something I came up with when I'm making some of these trainings up and these webinars. So I think if we skip that part and we don't have that cooperative relationship, then what I see happens, and what I have felt in the past when I wasn't so focused on pairing, is that I'm just spending the rest of the session trying to get the student to engage with me, or I'm trying to get the student to not engage in problem behavior. Okay, so this isn't the end-all be-all, but pairing is a really nice idea to start with, because you just want to build rapport and you write it on the data sheet. Today I paired with a student. These are the things that they liked. These are the things that they didn't like. And you know what? For some students, pairing may take like one session. For other students, it may take longer, and that's just going to depend on that learner. It's going to depend on that learner's educational history. You know, are they 8, 9, 10, no functional response form, and they haven't had a robust curriculum, and so maybe school is a time that's really hard for them. And so that pairing may take a lot longer with that type of student. Okay, so that's the idea of pairing. So if you're just joining us, we did a little review of the verbal operants from last week: man, tact, echoic, and intraverbal. And then we just talked about pairing. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is a preference assessment. So let me know if you've ever done a preference assessment before. It wasn't something that I was really keen on before or knew about when I was a speech language pathologist, but studying in my coursework to become a board certified behavior analyst, I learned a lot more about preference assessments. Now, with that being said, there is you know, in the behavioral world, there's very specific ways to do reinforcer assessments, preference assessments. So I want you to know, if you're listening to me and you're a BCBA, that there's more complex ways to do these different things, okay? But what I want to do is talk about the ways that we can actually talk about a preference assessment. Google it. I'm going to tell you about my favorite preference assessment, but it's definitely something you can Google, look up, and you could use in therapy tomorrow, or in your classroom, or with your student or kid, okay? Whoever is listening out there in Facebook land. So a preference assessment just lists different things that are potential reinforcers. Now, why this is so important is that one of the first things that we're going to work on with students who are nonverbal or limited verbally is manding. Manding helps a student, and we'll get into this more next week, realize that their communication is powerful, okay? I do something, I get something. I sign computer or movie, I get movie. I sign candy, I get candy, okay? But what we have to first do is pair with our student, and then we have to do a preference assessment. Now, we may do something really specific as a preference assessment, or we may just do a preference assessment while we're pairing with the student. That's what I try to do. And some students, I like preference assessments because I have worked with some students who were not engaged with anything that typical learners or kiddos would think is reinforcing. You know, like doesn't like to watch a movie. You know, everybody loves the iPad. That's hard. Doesn't want to take a walk. Doesn't like to look at books. All those things that we have readily available in our therapy room, right? We have to think outside of the box. So let me know, do you have a student like this? This has been my history of having some students who were difficult and really made me challenge my brain. And so a preference assessment has different things that could potentially be reinforcing. So I really like the preference assessment by Amy McGinnis. She's an occupational therapist and a BCBA. And I will put up the link to it after our Facebook Live tonight. But why I like it is she breaks hers up into like visual. So it's different sensory areas. So under visual, it might be, does the student like to use a flashlight? Does the student like to look at mirrors? Does the student like glitter? And the idea is you want to try some of these different things to tease out, what does the student like? What does a student not like? So we want to have a pool of reinforcement. Why that's important is that when we're working on manding with a student, when we're trying to increase their communication, we need to know what types of things they like, because we want to start working, obviously with manding, on things that they enjoy using and doing, okay, activities. We also need to have reinforcers because just with anything, like we in our work life, you know, reinforcement for me is shopping, which I just did this weekend, and Netflix. But for students, they need to have reinforcement too. So if we're working on work tasks or academic tasks, we work for a little bit, they get a reinforcement. We work for a little bit, they get a reinforcement. Well, if we don't have that reinforcement, then the work part is going to be hard. Okay, and so preference assessments have a big part in making therapy and school educational, fun, they're learning, they're motivated. So we're kind of trying to find out what they're motivated by. And that's another point about reinforcement. We haven't talked about reinforcement, but I always like to ask myself, you know, what is a student into today? We don't want to say, and if you just joined us, we're talking about preference assessments now, but we don't want to assume that a student, just because they liked the iPad yesterday, that they're going to like it today and the next day and the day after that. So we want to ask our students, our learners, what are you into today? Okay, I always use my coffee example. One day I might want Dunkin' Donuts, the next day I might want Starbucks. But if I didn't have a choice, I would be grumpy, okay? And so sometimes, you know, we're working with students who are grumpy because they can't tell us what they want. So this preference assessment helps us. So what we do is we just go through the list. If there are things that we have or activities that we can do, and we try to gauge, does the student like this? Does the student not like that? So our idea is we want to have a pool of reinforcement for that student. So I was saying that Amy McGinnis, who is an occupational therapist and a BCBA, has a really great preference assessment, and I'll put that link below. So it's into different sensory areas. So visual, then under auditory, she has things like, does the person like to play the piano, use a microphone, clap? I actually used to have a student that really liked to clap. Tactile, bubble wrap. I mean, right? We're probably throwing that stuff away all the time. That could be a gem. That could be that kid that doesn't like anything. That could maybe be a potential reinforcer. A stress ball, pom-pom. Kinetic, piggyback rides, which I have a student that likes those, swinging. And so it's broken up into different ways. Now you can just Google preference assessment and you could come up with something and you could use it tomorrow in therapy and say, you know, I've got this one student who really doesn't seem to like anything. I really think I need to work on specific manding, and this is where we're going to start. Or I have a student who is just running around the therapy room and is, you know, hard to corral, and I feel like I'm just trying to manage their behavior. And instead of that, you know what, let's start with a preference assessment. So that's kind of the idea behind preference assessments. So tonight, if you're just tuning in, we talked about pairing, so making sure that we are pairing ourselves with reinforcement, with making sure that we are a fun person, that materials are fun, and taking that time to really build rapport with students before we start demanding a whole bunch of things. And then we also talked about tonight preference assessment. So I will put up a link for my favorite preference assessment, and just remembering that preference assessments are so important because we need to have a pool of reinforcement for our students to be motivators during academic times, when we're working on communication-based tasks, vocational-based tasks, and also when we're working on requesting. And so these Facebook Lives are going to, at the start of the year, be more about students who are nonverbal and really struggling to develop a response form. And so preference assessments are a great place to start. So I wanted to tell you about that. A couple other things that I wanted to let you know is that I have a new product in my TPT store, and it is 50% off this week. So it's category matching and labeling cards. It's kind of boring, but that's the name of it. And so I just get kind of bored with what's out there in the products that we use all the time. And so I have some intermediate learners that I want to teach them different things. So I have instruments, fruit, breakfast food, vehicles, and veggies. And so they're different types. They're not bizarre pictures, but they're kind of different. So in fruit, I have pineapple. In veggies, I have peppers. And so it's for students that are a little bit intermediate learners, and each picture has 2 identical pictures. So there's 60 cards total, and there's 6 each examples from every single category that I just said. And so that's only $3 this week on my TPT store. And I also wanted to tell you about, if you're not aware, I've created the Action Builder cards. And so I was wanting to create cards that would help students plan for generalization from what's happening in the therapy room to what's happening in the natural environment. And I just wasn't finding that out in the marketplace. So I thought, hey, if I'm using Google Images to make a bunch of things and the people I work with are doing the same, why not just put something together and get it out there in the market? So these cards are for sale on Amazon, Different Roads to Learning, and the National Autism Resources, okay? They don't have a picture up, but they are for sale. As new distributors, and there are new distributors that are coming on, I will let you know each week, and I will put those in the comments below. So, and I just mailed some cards out tonight, so very exciting. I love that they're getting out there, and really they're just for teaching language systematically. Because what was I finding is that they're in action cards that are out there now, there's just one example of an action, and I want to teach my learners many examples, because if I don't, they have trouble generalizing. So, for example, you know, we have washing hair, we have washing dish, and we have washing hands. Sorry, it's kind of glary. And these all mean washing, okay? That's what I want my learner to know. So the Action Builder cards. I also wanted to let you know that we are going to start a promotion, and it's going to be called Where Are the Action Builder Cards? So the Action Builder cards are going to go places over this school year. If you're just tuning in, I'm just letting you know about the Action Builder cards. They're going to go places each month. I'm going to take a picture of the Action Builder cards somewhere. I'll put it up on my Facebook or my Instagram. I'm over there at ABA Speech by Rose. And if you guess, if you're the first person to guess where the Action Builder cards are, you will get something free from my TPT store. So as always, please feel free to stay in touch with me. If you are not signed up for my newsletter at www.abaspeech.org, I hope that you'll go and sign up for my newsletter, because every month this school year there will be a freebie. And so I decided that the 10th of every month I will release a freebie, and that will come out in the monthly newsletter. And this month's freebie will be a webinar on collaborative services for students with autism, which is so very important. So thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you're having a great short week this week with the holiday. Next week, when we get together on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, we are going to start talking about manding. Where do we start with students who are limited verbally and we want to help give them a functional response form? We start work on manding. So I have a lot to say about that, but I'll try to keep it short, and we'll do it each week. So thanks for tuning in. See you guys.